Imagine an intentional community with a relatively big garden where people grow part of their food, aiming to achieve complete food self-sufficiency. Suddenly, certain changes occur within the community which affect decisions about the use of the garden. The community cannot decide which direction to take. Either continue growing food only for their own, increase the production level and sell fruits and vegetables to generate income, or to do something in between. It seems to be a simple decision, but it's more complicated than that. Especially if community members have different visions regarding the garden. I took this opportunity to help and support the community in taking a decision. For this, I attempted to use a computer model as a decision-making tool, together with my best academic knowledge. But before I tell you the results, let me introduce you first the community. Vlierhof was founded in September 2002 by 4 people. One of them is Anutos, who, after sailing for 10 years, returned to the Netherlands to build a better boat for his next trip. He attended a workshop organized in a community where he first experienced community life. After the workshop, he made a commitment to stay there for 1 year. After the 1 year passed, he went to another community where he stayed for 3 years. In the meanwhile, he attended several meetings of the eco-village movement in the Netherlands. Members of this movement wanted to create a new community, but this remained mainly at the level of discussions.
In May 2002 I decided, okay, I'm leaving here, I'm going to travel. I had a party with my girlfriend and people from the community, from the eco-village movement. And we started to talk, that I was sick and tired of talking. And we decided, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. So it was not an intention, it was, let's do it. That was May 2002, and September 2002 we were here.
I was a member of eco-village in the Netherlands, and a few members of eco-village, they had, we can come together and have meetings and then go to your own place, but they really would like to set something down on earth. And so a few members of eco-village, they decided to buy a farm, and it was from the Netherlands, but in Germany the farms, the houses are much cheaper. So they bought a farm here in Germany, which was, you don't need so much money, and there was also land with it. So they bought it here in 2002, I think. Yeah.
Frederica first arrived to Vlierhof in 2003 during volunteer weekends. In 2005, she introduced her idea of making a small labyrinth in the community, which was received well. Since then, she works there a couple of days every month and maintains the labyrinth.
In the beginning, there was also a care farm, so there were people from the care farm who worked also in the vegetable garden, and the vegetables should be for the people who live here.
The farm they bought was 2 kilometers away from the Dutch-German border and 16 kilometers away from the city of Kleve in Germany. The farm came with several buildings and 1 hectare of land, which later was extended with 2 more hectares. The community then started farming in order to produce their own food. At the same time, the place was functioning as a care farm for people with psychiatric problems. They received professional care from a psychologist who lived on the farm together with her child and husband, who was fulfilling the role of the gardener at that time.
So it all had to do with self-sufficiency, but also was kind of, we needed work. We needed workers, because that was our work. Our income was people with psychiatric problems to heal again. So it was not really a vision on the farm. Obviously we want to do a good job, obviously, but it was all, it all fit together,
Since then, several different gardeners, sometimes professional, sometimes not, were shaping the community garden. These gardeners received help from volunteers who went to Vlierhof during volunteer weekends, just like Frederica. Today, Vlierhof is receiving volunteers from all around the world through the WOOF and Workaway networks. They welcome people who are interested in learning about organic farming practices and experiencing community life in general. In return, they work in different units of the community, from garden to seminar house. This way, Vlierhof makes sure that they can face the labor requirements of the community. They also had students from Hogeschool Rijn-Waal University in Kleve who did their internships at Vlierhof.
So they bring labor, and what do you take away is knowledge, growth. You know, that was always our intention.
The organizational form of Vlierhof is not consolidated yet. However, they are experimenting with dynamic governance, or in other words, sociocracy. In this practice, an organization is divided in several circles or groups. Each circle has its own tasks and responsibilities within its own domain. Vlierhof has 7 circles: administration, maintenance, kitchen, garden, volunteers, seminar house, and home care. Every community member is part of one or more groups. Each group has a leader and a delegate. The leaders and delegates of every group are part of a general circle where the main decision-making takes place. The role of a leader is to communicate the operational plan and make sure the circle is productive. The delegate represents the circle and makes sure the voice of circle members is heard. Decision-making is done by using consent, which is defined as no objections. This applies to all circles or groups.
And later I realized, and actually last year I realized, we are a laboratory of social innovation. And we are actually. Somebody mentioned that, he said, oh, we are, and we put it in our mission. And that's what we always have been, a laboratory for social innovation. Yeah.
The vision and mission of Vlierhof is to promote awareness and peace on Earth. We want to make a contribution to the social and environmental problems faced by the society today, living as self-sufficiently as possible. In accordance with this vision, they grow part of their own food in the community garden. They started the production in 2017 after a long break. They have a greenhouse, a polytunnel, and several open fields. They grow 45 different crops on less than 0.3 hectares. In other parts of the land, there are 15 different types of fruiting trees and shrubs. The produce of these crops is mainly consumed by the community either as fresh fruits and vegetables, prepared meals, or conserved goods. Occasionally, they sell some of their production on site. Vlierhof is quite a dynamic place, meaning that community members can change often. This has a strong impact on the whole community, its organizational form and decision-making process. This influences decisions about the garden as well. During the fall of 2018, there was a trial period when Vlierhof was selling a portion of the garden produce to an organic shop. After the trial period expired, they stopped selling because the current garden setup and the entire organization was not designed for this purpose. In order to deliver to the shop, they should have a stable production throughout the growing period and to know in forehand which products they can deliver at a given time. To realize this, the garden and its operational way should be changed and upscaled. However, not every community member shared the idea of selling to the organic shop, therefore this remained an unsolved question. In order to help the community deciding, First, I had to learn more about the garden. For this, I used records from the garden database. The missing parts I completed from scientific literature. This helped me to do a complete farming system analysis. I was also interested in the social demands of the community towards the garden. Therefore, I decided to interview several community members and ask them, what is the purpose of the garden in the community? What they like about the garden and what would they change?
The garden is primarily for sustaining the community, and that there is a business plan and that has been, or at least one business plan devised that would involve selling to outside parties. So I think that the idea of a self-sustainable garden is good. I agree with that. I think that should be our primary aim.
I think it is really nice that you know that you have an area where you have your own vegetables. That for some people it's such a strange thing to see that it's a seed and then it's a little plant and then then you can see it growing. So looking at it, this growing process can be also I think a nice education to look at it and you put it in your mouth, you know. And nowadays it's already known that we put so much gas and oil when it comes. It's built maybe in Chile or Argentina, and then it comes with an aeroplane here, and then with a big car, and then with a little car, and so we put so much oil and gas and that kind of things in it. And if you make it yourself here on the field and you harvest it, you don't have that oil now. So I think that is a big advantage of letting it grow and also looking at it and tasting and yeah, I think that's a very good learning, educating thing.
Yeah, everybody likes it to have your vegetables from your own land. Tastes much better. And yeah, in comparison to the prices of what you buy in the supermarkets, it's way cheaper. You don't have the cost of labor. And yeah, also people like it when they come here to learn from gardening. People have the idea of wanting to begin a community themselves, but they don't know how. You form sort of examples that people can follow.
I like it that we eat from our own garden, and I like it that it's biodynamic gardening and that it's healthy what we eat, therefore. I feel sad if we have to waste food in general. So I think the communication with the kitchen sometimes can be better. Or with selling or giving away surplus.
According to the interviewees, the garden's main role is to feed the community as much as it's possible. But what if they have more than what they need? They might share it with others, but what about that business plan?
For me, I think sales are really, I think it's about connecting to the local, like our neighborhood and the communities, the local communities. I think it's a nice way of just showing that we also care about them. We're not just a little island, you know. We're not isolated or insulated from the rest of the neighboring society. So I think it's quite important to do at least local sales.
I would prefer to use all the things and to reduce the things we buy. Even I have to eat 2 weeks walnut and don't get something else, I would prefer this than to sell and buy other things.
I think it's for the exchanging with the contact with the surrounding, and people buy products which are from this area, so there is not much oil in it. You could also give some information about that. If you buy it in a shop, you have so much gasoline to bring it to your plate and to put it in your mouth, and if you buy it here, it's only this amount. That makes a big difference. I think that's really nice information. A lot of people don't know it. They think, oh, this is more tasteful. That's also a very positive point, of course. Yeah? No poison used. And
For me, selling the products of the garden to the old economy, it's a thing from my heart I don't like. It's a thing to get, if the garden team has this feeling, oh, we could make more if we could sell it. And with this, the garden team go to a higher effectivity. With this, I can agree that it happens.
But would it be another option, something in between food self-sufficiency and sales?
I believe that there's both can be there at the same time, because right now our head gardener says he can't produce so much because then we will have to throw away a lot. So he produces less, so we are less self-sufficient in order to waste, to throw away less. If we know we have a source where we can give it all the things we don't need, then we can even have a higher self-sufficiency and a higher selling. So I think both are supporting each other, instead of saying, okay, when we do this, this will reduce. So it's beneficial for both.
The main demand, which every interviewed person mentioned, was food self-sufficiency. But to obtain food self-sufficiency, one needs to have a balanced diet. This implies a relatively high crop diversity in the garden. To grow good quality food, one needs a healthy and fertile soil as well. And finally, to cultivate all these different plants, one needs to meet the labor requirements of all the grown crops, from groundworks to harvest and even processing. Therefore, I asked the community, what do they think about these aspects? Does the community provide enough labor to cultivate all the land, or you get some additional labor in the growing season?
No, well, we get more labor in the summertime, but most people, they don't want to come in the wintertime. I cannot always guarantee that there is enough variating work. People not come here to keep whole week only digging in the ground. And
I think labor has been adequate. Yeah, this has not been a problem. It seems to me like it's like especially this season where we've had such hot months. It hasn't been, the demand hasn't been there, I think, because of the weeds just haven't been growing, you know. And I remember last year when we did have a lot of weeds, we had enough we got more short-term volunteers.
I think we just need to work harder.
So you mean work more hours?
No, I think just raise our energy and organize ourselves better. Like, I think we have enough people, but I don't know to say in the garden, but I think if we organize ourselves better, then we can do the work that needs to be done here.
I think it might be helpful to have more people, and especially people who are prepared for this work, and not people coming for a week. You have to explain everything and then they leave again. So it's about knowledge as well, and being aware of the task and taking the task for themselves and not waiting until they get an order, because it's really a space of a lot of freedom here, and if you don't take the tasks, sometimes no one will tell you that you have to or that you should. So it's really nice to have people who are motivated and who really want to bring the space forward, instead of people coming for a day and then leaving again.
We don't need any much labor anymore because we've just got a new machine for the tractor. So that's actually a big, that has always been a big blockage, and it's out of the way now. And it hasn't been for the last 15 years. So it's actually a breakthrough, and I think it will have a big impact.
To achieve complete food self-sufficiency, it's not enough to produce only the required number of calories. Other nutrients such as proteins, vitamins, and micronutrients are also required for a healthy diet. I wanted to know how the community thinks about this. Therefore, I asked them whether the current diet is balanced and if it provides a good nutrition.
I feel personally, but also I see it in others, that there is a lack of the food is not balanced. So every now and then people get sick. I feel by myself that every now and then I feel the food is not enough. If you do really hard labor, it's not enough to eat only vegetables and beans and rice. Somehow I sometimes feel I miss something, and I don't know if that's me or but I see it also in other people.
If you focus more on local things, like if you don't buy oranges anymore, for example, then you need to change a bit the processing and consumption habits, of course, to save the jams for the time when there are no fruits in the garden, for example.
In the springtime you can add also the wild plants to it, what you have. And it's also very healthy for minerals and vitamins, which are especially in those wild plants available.
We're supplementing our vegetable intake or consumption by buying in from another producer. So I think until we can cut that out, there's always room for improvement.
Overall, the two main conflicting viewpoints were food self-sufficiency and sales. Although there was an idea that these two could be combined, not everybody shared this vision. Hence, an option which would serve the whole community's needs was required. To find out if there is such an option, I began with analyzing the collected data. First, I assessed the current farming performance using a computer model called Farm Design. Afterwards, I checked whether the social demands are in compliance with the garden's status quo. I found out that the farming performance was relatively low and the social demands were only partially fulfilled. To overcome these deficiencies, I created a redesigned scenario which would fulfill almost all the requirements of community members. The scenario I created was based on the initial garden setup. To this, I added a few other crops, introduced chickens and goats, and allocated more land for cultivation. Although the design was promising, it could have been realized within several years only. Therefore, I created two less ambitious scenarios which have a shorter realization time between 1 and 2 years. In one of these scenarios, I kept the animals but reduced the amount of cultivated land and the number of grown crops. In the last scenario, I added only some herbs to the initial garden setup. I used farm design to discover the maximum potential of these scenarios. Farm design includes a Pareto-based multi-objective optimization algorithm, meaning that it can optimize several objectives at the same time. The result of this process was a multitude of alternative farm setups. To communicate my findings, I gave a presentation in the community where all residents were invited. They received the results with surprise and skepticism at the same time. They were surprised what the potential productivity of the garden could be in terms of food and money. However, they were skeptical about the results because they have been obtained using a computer model. After the presentation, a small informal discussion initiated. During the discussion, I observed a lot of enthusiasm from most of the people. Some community members seemed to be quite positive and were looking forward to the future collaboration. Therefore, I proposed to have a group discussion with the whole community to find a solution which would meet everyone's needs. However, this isn't the way how decision making is done in Vlierhof. To discuss your idea as a community member, first you should create a proposal which will be introduced during the next regular meeting. Therefore, the garden team, together with a few members of other circles, decided to create a proposal for a new garden plan. They invited me to support them with the results I obtained and my academic knowledge. During this session, I presented the results in more detail. After this, I introduced them the computer model and we began to create new scenarios together. Due to the time constraint and newly emerging disagreements, the proposal creation was unsuccessful. Because of this, I became interested in how different community members might have interpreted the results. Therefore, I asked to have another interviewing session with them. During the interviews, I asked people about their perception on the research, its results, and the use of the computer model in general.
My opinion was more by step, you increase it and see what's going better. So yeah, in that perspective the garden is fine. But to get serious to self-sufficiency, indeed I think there need some changes. Yeah, and apparently now, according to your calculations and everything, it is like that. It can be improved so much. So I'm really open to learn, to see where we can fill these shortnesses.
Research made that very clear to me, exactly where we fall at the moment and where we can get and how. And before what you showed, it was just sort of a dream. Nothing was really concrete, but now it's seeing the research and the data makes it much more clear exactly what steps we need to take to get to where I would like to see us. Whether we all agree on that is another thing.
I knew that we weren't coming up with meeting our nutritional requirements, but for me, it was a little bit of a surprise to say that we're only 30% there, according to the present scenario in which you use the model to simulate. So that was a bit of a surprise. It was quite interesting. I hadn't even thought about the possibility of growing things like herbs which could be a cash crop, So that was something which I think is definitely has potential, and I would say if that can be monetized, then that could be useful. It could be a useful source of income, extra source of income.
I think those results are quite interesting, and they create a lot more perspective and clarity about possibilities and opportunities.
I was not fully aware of the value of each of the products that we have now. For example, like the simulation model that you used. Also in factoring in the nutritional content of everything that we grow, and also the market value of everything, made it much clearer what products are fundamental for us.
Raising awareness, but also protecting maybe the Demeter thing, because that was also hanging on a thread sometimes. So I really think that's been stabilized also.
It's a nice overview, but still for the results of what we have from the garden, not really a clear view of what was capable in that time.
It was a bit abstract for me. Well, we would all this. I mean, how many different solutions you had? More than 100, I think. We would need to go into the details to really see what we need to do practically.
You can have a nice idea of how it should be in the year and so, but you also have influence from the weather, the nature itself. Yeah, you cannot steer that.
It's also good actually that we had this discussion about the garden because it brought up a much bigger issue for us. And not having a united vision is what's also been causing so many of these problems, because people have different priorities, different expectations for this place, for what we're trying to achieve, and the garden's so essential. So it's important that if we can at least unite around the garden and around what our intention is with that space, it can be kind of a starting point.
So we can have a lot of wishes. Instead of that, yeah, you just have to face the truth.
From the feedback of community members, I realized how different their vision was, even after learning about the results. However, I was still optimistic that they can find common ground and will decide how to use the garden. Although I would have loved to see a final redesigned plan of the garden, I did not carry the research further. I went back to Vlierhof for a few discussions, but none of them resulted in any agreement or plan. I had to acknowledge that this could happen only through a bottom-up approach initiated from the inside of the community. I couldn't help Vlierhof to find out what would be the best garden arrangement which could serve the majority's needs. However, indirectly, I helped them to realize that they should start the problem solving with other, more burning issues. This put me in the position of an involuntary change agent within Vlierhof. Nevertheless, several community members told me personally that they feel I brought some change to their community by studying their garden. To check whether my research methods were appropriate or not, further research would be required in other communities where people strive for food self-sufficiency and sustainable living. However, conducting research in several communities could be a lengthy process, given that my collaboration with Vlierhof was longer than 6 months. My advice for anyone who is interested in conducting research in ecovillages and intentional communities is to be prepared for the influence of certain social dynamics within the community and their potential influence on the research itself. As a final thought, I would like to emphasize the power and potential of visual research methods. Collecting data using audiovisual methods has many benefits. It allows the researcher to focus more on the studied subject or interviewee without being distracted by taking complex and lengthy notes. Having video recordings of an interview allows the researcher to analyze the information from that interview several times without the information being changed. Besides, an audio-video footage contains way more information than a written text or database. I would encourage everyone who is working with qualitative, participatory, or action research to consider video recordings as one of their main data collection methods.